So, T-Jump has a question floating around on Twitter. Who is the most important asset to atheism? In other words, I guess who produced the most atheists? To my mind, it's clear, easy answer. There's only one possible answer. Aaron Ra and atheist experience. Looking back on 10, 15 years, atheist experience is the economic engine of atheist production. They produce more atheists than anybody else, and ditto for Aaron Ra. And there's no real other answer. If you go listen to a lot of deconversion stories, which I've done, I've listened to the deconversion stories that I've personally, when I had personally on my channel, then I've listened to a lot just clicking on links. Inevitably, you hear somewhere in that deconversion story, Aaron Ra or the atheist experience. The atheist experience in particular has been the economic engine of atheist production. It probably produced more atheists than anything else. And the key to it was Matt Dillahunty. Now, here's the good news for the Christian. Matt Dillahunty is not replaceable. It's talent. Part of what he does is a talent. So, for example, when he was in his... well, first let me tell you about Matt Dillahunty's street tactics. It's been a while since I talked about this. Now, Matt Dillahunty, as I pointed out in some of my last videos, this point maybe 20, 30 videos ago, really, really good at street tactics. Some people took objection to this. They're like, Matt Dillahunty's not an expert at street tactics. He kind of is. And he doesn't do street tactics in normal debates. Why? Because he'd look like an idiot for doing it. In a normal debate, one-on-one debate or a YouTube debate, it's a bit structured, it's a bit formalized. You start using street tactics, you look like an idiot. And Matt Dillahunty is somewhat aware of that fact. Now, what makes him good at it, as I pointed out, this is going back 20 videos or so, but there was a time, and it looks to me like Skylar has stopped using street tactics. But when Skylar was using his street tactics in debate, what made him bad at it was that there was nobody who wasn't catching him doing it. Everybody was objected to him. He'd be in 15 debates and 15 people would object to his behavior. What makes Matt Dillahunty good at it, he only does it on the atheist experience, he's really good at it. Really, really good at it. Okay, fine, expert's too strong of a word, Craig. Okay, fine, he's not an expert, but he's really darn good at it. What the giveaway that he's really good at it is that the person who it is being done to barely perceives it's being done. Almost never perceives that it's being done to them. Every once in a while they'll object to his behavior. But more often than not, you'll find the person who it's being done to, they're being played. And they don't even recognize that they're being played. And they might even apologize to him. I'm sorry, I'm wearing you out, man. I feel really nervous. I'm sorry if I'm wasting your time. They'll start apologizing to him for trying his patience. That's how good he is at doing it. The person who it's being done to barely perceives that it's being done. And it works like this. And just a little aside, I may have mentioned this in videos in the past. There was a time where I used to work at the Radio Shack right down the road. And there was a guy I knew there. His name was Martin. Really good guy. I was really pretty good friends with him. And one day I find out that the guy used to be in Asian street gangs. I swear to God. And the story how I found out was kind of funny because there was this. When I was at work in situations that were social, I would do this weird thing. I still do it all the time, actually, where I would say, just throw out a weird question, a conversation starter. So I'd say like, hey, you ever been in any fights? That was one of my conversation starters. You're hanging out with people at work, you want to hear weird stories about their life. So I said that to him one day. I said, hey, you ever been in any fights, Martin? He gives me this really weird, demented smile. I swear to God, it's this really weird, demented smile. He's like, dude, I've been in hundreds of fights. I was like, oh, wow, this is really weird. All right, tell me the stories. Turns out he'd been in Asian street gangs. At first glance, I had written this guy off as a computer nerd, Asian, and he fit the profile. I knew him pretty well. And this had been a while since he'd been in Asian street gangs. And I knew he was telling me the truth. Why? Because I could tell by the stories. He started telling me these stories in detail. And he was a street fighter. But at first glance, I had written him off as a computer nerd because he fit the profile. He was always showing me his drawings. Does that sound familiar? He's always showing me his cartoon drawings. He was always talking about computers. How we bonded originally was we were talking about directors. I think it was Stanley Kubrick. There's a really first-rate war movie called Paths of Glory, and that was one of our key things that we started talking about and we started hitting it off. I became friends with him. And then he started telling me these stories in detail about way back when, 8 years prior, where he used to be in street gangs in San Francisco. And he was in Asian street gangs getting in street fights. And I could tell by the stories he was telling the truth, because every single note of it rang true. So the essence of street fighting is misdirection. How he would describe it, like this. These were his actual words, fighting is really emotional. Fighting is really emotional. If you stay calm, you will win. And if you stay calm and you have presence of mind, then you can start. The essence of street fighting is misdirection. So how he describes it is you're in a fight and he's totally calm, and misdirection and obfuscation. And he's totally calm, and he would like throw a piece of paper in the air. The person starts looking at the piece of paper, bang, hits him right in the temple really quickly. Potentially knocks him out. You get hit in the temple really hard by someone who knows how to punch, and you could be knocked out right then and there. Also, where you hit somebody, solar plexus, neck, you can take someone out really quickly and really easily if you have presence of mind and you're calm. And then you also try to disrupt the other person's emotions. So he'd say, not only was he calm and rational, but then also he'd start doing weird spaz things. Like he'd do weird things to throw everybody off. Like he told me about how at this time he jumped into a car full of kids. Jumped into the car full of these kids. Yeah, it was crazy. Kind of a crazy kid. You would never know this from the surface hanging out with him at all. Till you start digging into the stories, you'd think he was like, just this sort of nice guy. I had written him off. Nice guy, computer nerd, nice kid. And then I find out, like, yeah, he's totally dangerous. And then everyone, once he started explaining this to me, you could see it in him. Like, one guy came in, who was this big guy, was starting a fight, and I could see Martin looking at him with this, like, demented smile. I was like, uh-oh, someone's about to get killed. Someone's about to get killed by this Asian street fighter. I swear, once you saw it in him, then you recognize it. He was about my height, so he was 6 feet, but he was bigger than me. He was stockier. And then you're like, yeah, I could actually see this guy being really dangerous in a fight. So the essence is misdirection. Misdirection, obfuscation, playing with getting people, the other person worked up. So he'd do weird things like jump into a car full of kids and start going like, blah! And they're all freaking out. Do weird things. Disrupt. Now, that's exactly what Matt Dillahunty does on the Atheist Experience. There's almost like a science to it. Swear to God, if you go watch any of the last 5 ones. It works almost the same way every single time. And why I say he's really good at it is the person who it's being done to barely perceives that it's happening. So, it goes down like this. The person calls up and goes, I've got this thing I'm going to want to present to you. And the person will start talking and literally get about 20 seconds, 30 seconds into what they're about to present, and you'll stop them. Right there. That's a street tactic. Now, I'm not saying Matt Dillahunty is doing this consciously. It might be unconscious. But it's effective and it's worth noting. Stopping someone immediately. What does that do? If I'm calling up to present an argument, me establishing a rhythm, me talking for 20, 30 seconds to warm myself up is a really big, important part of me presenting that argument clearly and concisely and correctly. That's part of why I do my videos the way I do it and don't bother scripting. Why? Because you've got to warm up and then you start talking. Same thing when you're calling up. It's why I would never call up with Matt Dillahunty. Why? Because he'd disrupt me. I start talking 20 seconds in, he'll go, oh, wait. Stop you. And pretend he's asking a clarifying question. That's one thing the atheists always tell you. I'm asking a clarifying question so you don't run a script. No, they're not. They're misdirecting you. They are disrupting you. Whether they're doing consciously or not, it's what's happening. They're disrupting you so you can't actually correctly present your argument. And then he will usually ask a really highly charged emotional question. Are you telling me? And he charges it up with all this emotional significance. Wait. That's where the person starts getting thrown. So he'll disrupt immediately, and then somewhere in the next 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds, ask a highly charged, it's really emotionally significant that you answer this. And the person starts feeling defensive immediately. Now the person's back on their heels. They've been disrupted. They're not thinking clearly. They've been knocked off of their feet. And guess what? The debate's over right then and there. Usually, go watch the comment section. The atheists know it. They'll say, this debate's over. Once you got the person back on their heels and they're being defensive, that's why he does it. Bang, disrupt. 2, misdirect with something emotionally charged. Are you telling me that you don't think the Bible endorses slavery? Well, that's not what that's what the person starts going, that's not really what and then they're off their point and they're defending themselves against something else, and it's over. It's over. They're not going to present an argument, and if they do get back to their argument, they're not going to present it in any way that it's going to be convincing. It's over. Now, can't do that in debate, you get caught. People think you're an idiot. But that's the essence of what he does, and it's really skillful when he does it, and the key reason why it's skillful is it barely being perceived by the person it's being done to. They usually wind up apologizing to Matt Dillon. I'm sorry, I'm nervous, just bear with me. They start apologizing to him, not recognizing they've been played the whole time. They start apologizing to him, Now, couple of key things about this. First of all, the atheist experience, as I pointed out, started this whole thing off, is the economic engine of atheist production. And its sole source of atheist production is him, for the most part. It's probably the only reason I watch the show. It's probably the main reason why a lot of people watch the show. And here's the bad part for if you're the atheist listening. Here's the thing that's, not good for your squad. It relies on his talent to work successfully. That's not good for the long run. Now, let's take the time I was going to point out when he was that's why I started with that, going to the street tactics, just to remind you about his street tactics. Now, let's take, for example, the one debate that I point out time and time again that he actually lost. He lost it to Michael Jones of Inspiring Philosophy, and he lost it convincingly. The first debate they were in together, not the second debate. It's really important that you remember which debate I'm talking about. The first one, about the secular utility of religion. Matt Dillahunty lost that easily, cleanly, by a lot, even according to all the atheists in the comment section. Now, why is that important? Because as much as you might like Michael Jones, and I like Michael Jones too, here's the really beautiful fact about him. He's not especially talented. He's not. He's smart. He's as smart as Matt Dillahunty, sure. Matt Dillahunty's really talented. He has a rare gift for whatever it is he does. Debate, articulation, explaining things in a way that makes sense to people, explaining complex ideas in a way that most people can understand. It's a gift. It's an actual gift. Okay? Michael Jones is probably as intelligent as he is, but he's not particularly talented. What he does really well is he prepares thoroughly, and he does his research, and he does his homework, and he's a bright guy. But you could raise up 50 Michael Jones. You could raise up 100 Michael Jones. I know about 10 people listening to this video who, if they put enough work in, could easily be as good as, am I getting his name right? Michael Jones, right? That's his name, Inspired Philosophy? I think that's his name. Sorry if I'm getting the name wrong. Pretty sure that's his name. I know about 15, 20 people who listen to my videos pretty regularly who could easily be as effective as he is in a debate if they just did the homework that he does. That's all I'm pointing out. I'm not trying to downplay him. I'm just saying there's no particularly extraordinarily talent involved with what he does. He just happens to be a really bright guy who does his homework. Period. That's easy to reproduce. You get 100 people together, you can raise up 10 Michael Jones. You're not going to find another Matt Dillon. You're not going to find another person who can argue that way and talk that way. You're not. So that's really good news for the theist. Why? Because we could raise up an army of people who could easily challenge the leading light of the atheist community easily. The reason why Michael Jones won that debate was pure and simple. He went in prepared with all of the evidence that backed the conclusion. As I pointed out at this point 30 or so videos ago, that's the game-changing debate for the Christian. It's easily winnable debate. The secular utility of religion. Why? Because the evidence backs the conclusion. Plain and simple. Now, getting back to a subject that I mentioned more recently. When Matt Dillahunty went off to college, some people got a little bit confused by this. That's when his deconversion began. Out of his own words, he went, no, not college, went and joined the Navy. And he was, I'm going to say it again. The same stupid joke over again. Now you know what my wife has to deal with. And he was part of the invasion force of Greece. That was a stupid joke the first time he said it, Greg. Yeah, I know. That's why I say, that's what I do to my wife every single day. I swear to God, I do it all the time. I tell the same stupid joke over and over and over and over and over and over again until she goes insane. It's awesome. She's not crazy about it, but it's really pretty fun if you're paying attention. I'll say the same things over and over again. She'll get mad at me. She'll go, "Dude, why are you doing that stupid sing-song voice?" That's what she calls my stupid sing-song voice. Anyways, changing the subject. Okay, so Matt Dillahunty goes off, joins the Navy. He's in the invading Greece. understand what happens. This is where his deconversion began. Now, as I pointed out in that video, some people got confused by this. What was the most important thing in his deconversion was not the ontological experience he had or professed to have as a Christian. What was the most important thing in his deconversion, and this is something I keep saying time and time and time again. Some of this is politics, some of this is politics, some of this is politics. What I actually mean by that is some of this is sociocultural, some of this is sociocultural, some of this is sociocultural. Doesn't quite have the same ring. You see why I don't say it? What actually happened was a sociocultural deconversion process. Now I've tried to parse out the difference between deconstruction and deconversion. Why? Because it's relatively important. Let me see how much time I have. He goes off and joins the Navy. He starts, quote unquote, deconverting. Some of this is sociocultural, some of this is sociocultural, some of it doesn't quite have the same ring. So I got to say politics, even though it doesn't quite make as much sense. It's a natural part of growing up. Even if you weren't a Christian, I had friends that were much near and dear to my heart when I was 15, 16, 17 years old. They were my entire world. I go away to college, I start changing. I start not really as relating to that group of people. I deconverted from my group of friends. It's a normal part of growing up. You go off to different places, you start changing internally, and you're not sure if you have the same value system as the people who were part of your core identity when you were 15, 16 years old. It's a value system more than anything else. It isn't the ontology of the religious experience itself. He goes off to the Navy, starts becoming a different person, comes back, sees those group of people, and recognizes, you guys ain't me anymore. Now that's a normal part of growing up. In my life, it happened with my friends. Why? Because the core group of kids I was friends with when I was 15, 16 years old, they're too arrogant. Honestly, they're too arrogant. When I was 20 and I started hanging out with my college friends, people from my hometown came and hung out with my college friends, and they were struck. The first thing they noticed is, wow, these guys are so nice. These guys are so laid back. They're a lot more, same idea. They were all kind of smart, wisecracking, whatever. But my friends in my core hometown were really, 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 really full of themselves. And it got really obnoxious to me at some point. Now they've changed. They've grown up over the years. One in particular, who used to be the most arrogant, is actually really fun now, really down to earth, really fun. Like turned into a really good guy. Part of it was because they were super intelligent. A lot of those kids went to Ivy League school. That's part of it. Part of it is just a natural part of being a 15-year-old. Part of it was our environment. Privileged environment, upper middle class suburbs, smart kids, a lot of money. Everybody thinks they're the coolest thing in town. It's kind of how it goes, So you start growing out of that particular group of friends. It's just, all I'm trying to say is it's a normal part of life. I deconverted from my original group of high school friends. I deconverted from them. I deconstructed. I started becoming a different person, and I didn't want to be in their club anymore. That's more important to what's going on. Somebody goes somewhere and starts having new experiences, doesn't want to be in the club anymore. That's more important to what is actually going on, this process that we are calling deconverted. And for lack of a better way of explaining it, I'm saying some of this is politics, some of this is politics, some of this is politics. When I really mean some of this is sociocultural, some of this is sociocultural, some of this is sociocultural, some of this is sociocultural. Yeah, it doesn't quite fall off the tongue, does it? No, it really doesn't. There is an ongoing propaganda campaign in our culture that is operating on all of us on a deep level. If you actually look at atheist arguments out there in atheist land, most of them are anti-Christian propaganda, period. They aren't actually arguments one way or the other. And the ones that are arguments are almost completely irrelevant to the ontology. In other words, there's a proposition, God exists, God does not exist. And most of the things that atheists are floating around as counter-apologetics or arguments against the existence of God are totally irrelevant to the proposition God exists, God does not exist. Let's just take the two most famous ones. The evil scriptures in the Old Testament and the Old Testament endorsing slavery. Let's just say for argument's sake that the atheists are right. Some of those scriptures are so terrible, Craig, they're so terrible. I know, it's killing me to even read it. It's so much cognitive dissonance. They're irrelevant. Both of those things can be true. The Old Testament can endorse slavery, and the Old Testament can have some hard-to-process scriptures, and God can still exist. They are completely and utterly irrelevant to the ontology. They're completely and utterly irrelevant to the proposition God exists, God does not exist. That's the only point I'm trying to make. So Matt Dillahunty goes off, joins the Navy, and seems to think that he deconverted solely because there was no evidence for God. But that was a very small part of what actually was in fact, the deconversion process. He joined the Navy in the United States of America, correct? In the United States of America, since the late 60s, there have been an ongoing propaganda campaign against being part of the club of Christianity. And it's been operating for a long time in a deep level at our culture, circumventing the logic, circumventing the conscious mind. For example, now I might have pointed this out in the past. If I did, it's worth repeating. Why? Because I think it's really more important. When I was a little boy, 6, 7, how old was I? Either second or fourth grade, somewhere between second and fourth grade. So what, 7, 8, 9, something like that? I went to Maine for a month and was hanging out with my cousins. When we were hanging out with my cousins, we used to sit around as a group, as a family, extended family, and watch movies together. One of the movies we watched was Carrie. And I remember this to this day. And I picked it up then, and I'm sure it spoke to me. And I'm sure it spoke to me long and hard in ways more important than any arguments out there, is the point I'm trying to make. But Carrie, if you remember, this was the original one with Sissy Spacek. Directed by Brian De Palma. John Travolta, yeah, John Travolta's in the movie. What on earth? Yeah, it's a little weird now thinking back of it. Yeah, John Travolta's in the movie. And we're watching it as a kind of a family unit. Now, a key part of that movie is her mom is a crazy religious person. They're breasts, mama! They're breasts, mama! They're not breasts, they're dirt mounds! And she starts literally hitting her with the Bible, I swear to God. I think she starts literally hitting her with the Bible, hitting her over the head. I'm not sure if that's where Bible Thumper came from, but she starts thumping her with the Bible. I'm pretty sure she actually hits her with the Bible. Now that message got through to me as a 7, 8-year-old, and it spoke loud and clear, and it wasn't something I rationally processed. It wasn't something that anybody had to argue to me. It was a cultural product, a mainstream cultural product by the culture that I was part of. And the message was loud and clear. My cousins probably even said it to me that day. You know, don't be religious. That's what religious people are like, Craig. They're Craig. They're totally crazy. Don't be one of them. That's the message. That club is full of wackadoodles. Don't join up with that club. Why? They are total stark raving mad. They're lunatics. Now that message was being ministered to Matt Dillahunty somewhere in the Navy by sources he wasn't even observing, or noticed that there was those arguments against the existence of God, so to speak, were entering his consciousness. They enter the consciousness of every single solitary person who is an American citizen in ways you barely perceive. And the message is loud and clear. Don't join that club. Why? They're crazy. Don't join that club. Why? They're crazy. Now, granted, that's only one movie. Fine. But that's an important trend that's been going on in our culture consistently since the late 60s. Consistently. Once upon a time, as I pointed out in other videos. You go back to 1955. The religious person was the good guy. He was in a Bob Hope, Bing Crosby movie. And he was building orphanages. He was a really nice person. And he was a trustworthy member of the community. Nowadays, more often than not, if he shows up in a movie as a character, he's a greedy evangelist. Does that ring a bell, anybody? Greedy evangelist? Anybody hear that stock figure? Ding, 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 ding. Yeah, based on real life, Craig, maybe. I'm just saying. Most of what the atheists are saying are arguments against the existence of God are not. They are propaganda pieces against Christianity. That's what they actually are. They have nothing to do with the existence of God. That's what I'm trying to point out. 50% of the arguments in atheist land are the Old Testament has evil scriptures and the Old Testament endorses slavery. That's half the arguments. That's got nothing to do with whether God exists or not. Both those things could be true and God could still exist. So they're irrelevant to the ontology of whether God in fact exists or does not exist. Totally irrelevant. And why do atheists not notice that? Because by the time they've gone from deconstruction to deconversion, they have a vested interest in being part of a new tribe and kicking ass and taking names for this new tribe of people known as atheists. And they're not necessarily always noticing that most of the arguments that they call counter-apologetics are totally irrelevant to the proposition God exists, God does not exist. So there's an ongoing cultural dialogue. Some of this is politics. Some of this is sociocultural. Some of this is sociocultural. All of it is. And it's happening beneath the conscious awareness of most people who are participating in these space. And most people out there in the real world. I was given a set of preconceived notions about Christians. Just by virtue of being, in fact, raised in a normal upper middle class suburb that was really well educated. There were no such thing as an evangelical Christian in the town I grew up in. It was basically like growing up in Holland. Same idea, same stats even. I've talked about this in the past. I'll bring this up in the future. Why? Because bubbling underneath the surface was an army of discontent. The stats don't tell the full story. I was there. I know for a fact I was there. And the drug use alone is testimony to seething unrest that wasn't necessarily being vocalized. So the deconversion process that had already occurred in the culture that I was a part of, there was no such thing as an evangelical Christian. And there were only such things as nominal Roman Catholics, nominal Protestants. And to the untrained eye, all the stats were off the charts. The time I grew up, there was the second richest county in the United States. Don't know if that's still true. Probably not. I think it's third or fourth now. But the charts, the stats on the community were off the charts. You know, X amount of people make over X amount of dollars. All these people go to college, blah, 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 blah. But if you're there on the ground floor, you experience firsthand the seething actual unrest underneath it all that isn't being vocalized. And it only shows up in a few stats. That's an argument for another day. I'll go into that later in the future. What I'm trying to point out is the deconversion process. There's the deconstruction process, which I've said in the past makes sense. I'm part of a fundamentalist community. They tell me the earth is 6,000 years old. I suspect they're wrong. I suspect you're wrong, guys. Call me crazy. You just don't think you're right. So you go investigate for yourself because you want to believe what? What's true? Okay, fair enough. Deconstruction is what you call that process. Deconversion is a different thing entirely, and there's a missing link between I just don't believe exactly what I'm being taught by the fundamentalists. I don't think the earth is 6,000 years old. Not sure if the Bible is inerrant. Do think that some of these scriptures in the Old Testament are potentially troubling. Not sure what to make of all this. So you deconstruct and you start trying to develop your own relationship to your religion, your own beliefs. That's all healthy. That's all normal. It's all a normal part of growing up. That's why I said it even happened in my experience with my friends from my hometown. I deconverted from them. Why? Because in some ways they weren't completely me. It's normal. Part of that is normal. But there's a missing link between deconstruction and deconversion. Between now I'm a practicing atheist trying to convert people to the kingdom of atheism, trying to take names. There's a missing link that isn't being vocalized. And what I think is happening is going on underneath the surface. The ongoing subtle covert propaganda campaign is far more important to the eventual deconversion than anything else. Why? Because the arguments don't add up. They aren't real. They aren't the real thing. That's why. It's just something I'm going to keep going with because I really think it's the bulk. I really think it's where it's at. I really do. So that's what I was trying to get out with that other video. At this point, it might be a few days old, about Matt Dillahunty and Randall Rouser. I've told this story in the past. There is something more important to the deconversion process that is being vocalized by almost all of the people who actually deconvert. There is something more fundamental at play going on underneath the surface that they themselves are probably barely aware of. And the reason why I brought up the Carrie story from when I was in fourth grade is because that's a real story from my real life. And I'm relatively certain it spoke volumes to me. Way back when. Why? Because you can't argue your way out of that. It reaches you through your subconscious. Your cousin who you looks up to turns to you and says, "See, Craig, That's what religious people are like. They're crazy. The unspoken message is crystal clear. Don't join their club. Why? They're crazy. Now that is a covert message that is floating around in our culture since the late 60s. And it's an extraordinarily powerful one. And it's more powerful by virtue of the fact that it's pretty much covert. But it speaks volumes. That's why I brought it up. Because it's more important than the arguments on the surface. It's more important. It's truly what time it is. It's truly what's going on. That's what I think. So, there you have it, kids. Yeah, ranting and raving again. I know. You're all over the place, Craig. First you're talking about... I know. First you're talking about street tactics, and I'm with you and following you. Then you switch to this, and then... All right, fine, whatever. One day I'll start scripting these videos, and, maybe the ideas will flow a little bit more. This flows into that and obviously leads to that instead of just higgledy-piggledy. Oh yeah, this occurred to me while I was making my video, and then this occurred to me. One day maybe I'll script them. But for now, roll with it. Enjoy it. It's just part of this free-form, free-floating thing, bro. It's this free-form, like, cool jazz type thing I'm doing. It's this new thing. Just roll with it and enjoy it for what it is. So, there you have it, kids. And... need I say, if it's not your cup of tea, that's fine. Go watch the cat videos. The cat videos are over there, and you can go watch them. I'm sure they'll be right up your alley. They'll be right up your alley. Really entertaining from what I gather. Why? Because millions of people watch them. They have a lot more watch than my videos, that's for sure. Millions and billions of people watch them. So, if this ain't your thing, cool. Go watch cat videos. So, there you have it, kids. That is all for now. Mass has ended. Go in peace. Amen.